Hello, and welcome back to Something to Noodle On. Recently, I spent time at my friend David's house for a birthday weekend extravaganza. It was a mixing of minds, a group of people who have never met, and yet everyone was present and the conversation flowed all weekend. In a way, it felt like one of those artsy parties you see in Victorian or period movies where people gather illegally past hours to discuss life and ideas. People politely disagreed and discussions were had to change opinions, truly bringing collective minds together. It felt really good to have deep conversations, but it got me thinking, why as humans do we seek this connection and crave conversation, whether with people we know or don't? Let's dive in. From the beginning of human civilization, humans have thrived through connection, forming tribes and communities to survive and thrive. Our ancestors relied on conversations not only for sharing information, but for building trust and cooperation. They passed down these stories through spoken word and even communicated through drawings on rocks and cave walls. Then, communication was vital for survival. From our early days as social creatures, humans have relied on conversations to form bonds, share knowledge, and navigate the world. Sharing experiences meant we knew which plants were poisonous and animals to stay away from. But even today, why is human connection so vital? Let's start by exploring the biological and psychological basis for why we crave human interaction. Our brains are wired to be social beings. When we engage in meaningful conversations, our brains release various chemicals like oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. These are often referred to as the feel-good neurotransmitters. Oxytocin in particular plays a crucial role in bonding and social attachment. It's released not only during physical touch, but also during emotional connections formed through conversations. Think of human interaction kind of like a fuel for our emotional and mental well-being. Engaging in conversations and being present around people not only boosts our mood, but also enhances cognitive functions like empathy, problem solving, and creativity. Have you ever hung out with someone, maybe a friend, classmate, or hell, someone you work with, and just had a really good discussion? You walk away almost feeling euphoric and even more connected to that person. Those are the feel-good chemicals your brain is releasing, and subsequently, you crave more. Engaging in conversations stimulates different areas of our brain, responsible for language processing, memory, and even problem solving. Through discussions with those around us, we challenge our existing beliefs and ideas, leading to cognitive growth and enhanced creativity. Likewise, conversations provide us with valuable opportunities to practice empathy and emotional intelligence, which are essential skills for navigating complex social interactions. When someone comes up to you with a problem or a tough story, you instantly feel for them. Empathy and even sympathy are vital to the human condition. If you don't have those feelings, it's hard to relate to others. You might misinterpret what people are trying to say and have an inability to cope with emotional situations. You don't have to have had the same experience as someone else to have empathy, but the ability to understand where they're coming from and put yourself in their shoes is vital for growth. This isn't to say all conversations should give you personal growth and teach you something that just simply isn't realistic or how the world operates. But when you're in a group, it's important to remain present and actively listen to those in your company. In a world full of distractions and noise, truly listening to another person has become a precious skill that can enhance relationships and deepen our connections. But what exactly is active listening, and why is it important? Active listening is more than just hearing words. It's about being fully present and engaged in the moment. When you actively listen, you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're genuinely trying to understand the speaker's thoughts, emotions, and perspective. This process involves giving your undivided attention using verbal and nonverbal cues to show understanding and reflecting on what's being said before responding. When we actively listen, we convey respect and empathy to the speaker. This can lead to a deeper sense of connection. Most of the time, people just want to be heard and validated. Active listening provides that space, creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and emotions. As a result, relationships are strengthened and misunderstandings are reduced. For some, this might be easier said than done. Hello, ADHD brains. But have you ever been out to dinner with friends and your friend is telling a story? You might want to interject and tell about a similar experience to show that you've been through it too. But this is called listening to respond. You're just waiting for them to be done talking so you can go on about your own experience when really you should be actively listening and respond with a question, asking for more details. Here are some ways that you can actively listen to those around you. Remember to maintain eye contact. This shows that you're fully engaged and attentive, but also you don't have to stare at the person the whole time because that's just kind of awkward and I personally don't want to be stared at. It's also important to avoid interrupting. Allow the person speaking to express themselves without you chiming in. This can be easier said than done, but hold back. And use verbal affirmations such as head nodding or saying I see or I understand. It lets the speaker know that you are actually listening. And don't forget to reflect on what's being said. Before responding, take a moment to internalize the speaker's words and consider your response. Don't just change the subject to what you wanted to say next. And ask open-ended questions. Encourage the speaker to elaborate and share more by asking questions that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. Yes or no questions are conversation killers. It tells the other person you aren't really engaged and want to end this conversation. Remember that every conversation is an opportunity to truly connect and understand one another. By honing our active listening skills, we open the door to richer relationships and a deeper appreciation for the power of human interaction. A lot of people seem to want to put the blame on social media for our deteriorating social skills. This might certainly be the case if our nose is buried in our phones all the time. While technology has made communication more accessible, it has also presented challenges to meaningful interactions. The rise of social media and messaging apps has led to a shift in how we communicate, often sacrificing depth for convenience. But the beauty of face-to-face conversations lies in the subtleties, right? Like your tone of voice, body language, and even facial expressions. These can't be fully captured through text alone. With the rise of the internet, one might say we are connected more now than ever before. It's now possible to connect with people all around the world instantly and share our thoughts with a vast audience, like maybe a podcast. But we can now maintain relationships regardless of physical distance. However, this convenience comes at a cost. Digital communication often lacks the depth and nuance of face-to-face conversations. We miss out on the rich nonverbal cues like facial expressions, gestures, and tone of voice that play a significant role in understanding emotions and intentions. Our brains are wired to pick up nonverbal cues, which play a significant role in understanding the emotions and intentions behind the words. This isn't to say you can't ever have a meaningful conversation with someone over text or on Discord, but it isn't the common experience for most people. While these digital interactions provide a platform for communication, they can sometimes feel disconnected and impersonal. Genuine connections require more than just words on a screen. They thrive on emotional resonance and shared experiences. Face-to-face conversations offer a level of authenticity and intimacy that's challenging to replicate in virtual spaces. The digital landscape has introduced certain shifts in our behaviors and expectations when it comes to face-to-face communication. One impact you might have noticed is the pace of communication. Online interactions are often rapid fire with messages exchanging in seconds. This can spill over into our in-person conversations, leading to shorter attention spans and a potential decrease in patience for more extended or lengthy discussions. Additionally, the internet has cultivated a culture of constant connectivity and immediate gratification, which can influence how we engage in deeper and more thoughtful conversations. If we aren't engaged with the topic we're talking about, we might immediately feel bored or want to disengage, only to retreat back to our phones. The prevalence of screens from smartphones to tablets to even computers can create distractions even during in-person conversations. The impulse to check notifications or messages may interrupt the flow of discussion and hinder active listening. When you think about it, the internet has introduced new modes of expression through memes, emojis, even GIFs, which can impact our nonverbal communication cues in face-to-face settings. Striking a balance between the digital and physical world has become a crucial challenge. Everyone has a different stance on the topic of phones when hanging out with a group of friends. My friend David was saying that if you pull out your phone to scroll while hanging out with someone, you might as well have stayed home if you weren't going to remain present and engaged. While I do agree, being on your phone while at someone's house is really disrespectful and kind of rude. Though I do think it's a crutch. I was talking to my therapist about how frustrating it is when we hang out with this other couple. One of them is always on their phone playing games the entire time we're hanging out. They barely engage in conversation, and it feels as if they don't really want to be there with us. My therapist sheds some light on this, saying that scrolling is often a crutch for people with social anxiety. Retreating to a screen gives them a sense of comfort and security. I shared this tidbit with my friend David, and he said while he does see that side of things, if someone is coming over to their house, they should feel comfortable enough to engage in conversation, which is totally valid. Being aware of our digital habits and consciously choosing to set aside screens during meaningful conversations is a great step. Practicing active listening is even more crucial in a world of constant distractions. Additionally, taking breaks from technology and engaging in activities that naturally encourage interaction, like a team sports or group volunteering, can help us reconnect with the art of face-to-face communication. As we've seen the limitations of digital interactions, there's a growing appreciation for these face-to-face conversations. Reconnecting with the art of storytelling, shared laughter, and genuine presence can revitalize our relationships and honestly, our overall well-being. So, how can we incorporate more meaningful conversations into our lives? It starts with small steps, initiating real-time discussions, setting aside tech-free moments, and engaging in activities that naturally encourage interaction. Here are a few more tips that might help you unplug and connect with others more deeply. The first is taking time to schedule regular phone-free dinners with your friends and family. Or try joining local clubs or workshops to meet like-minded individuals. You can even practice mindfulness to enhance presence during these conversations. That's the active listening component we talked about earlier. Obviously, there are more ways to connect with other people, but these few tips are a great place to start. All right, let's switch gears and bring back some of those advice questions that you guys sent in previously. 2 questions were submitted, but they're both kind of similar. I'll read them both out and answer in the same way with some extra tidbits. So this person is asking, how do I tell my crush I like them? And then there's a second question from someone else that says, how do I tell someone you love them without making them mad? So they're kind of the same, but a little different. And let's go ahead and answer those. I think when you're younger, it's hard to tell your crush that you like them because you're afraid of embarrassment. And the embarrassment comes from them not reciprocating the same feelings back. However, if you're both flirty with each other, you can kind of tell that that person likes you too. While it seems really scary and daunting, I think just straight up telling them, hey, I have a crush on you is better than holding it in. Because you might find that they like you too, and therefore you might start dating, which is the best outcome that could possibly happen. Something I learned in therapy when dealing with situations that give you anxiety is thinking about all the possible scenarios. So first you'll tell yourself out loud what is the best possible thing that can happen and what would happen as a result of that. Okay, what's the worst possible possible thing that could happen, and what's the result of that. In this case, it's total embarrassment, and maybe they tell everybody that you like them and make fun of you. While that does totally suck, things move very, very quickly, and everyone's going to forget about it in a week or two. So while it is something terrible to happen, it's more than likely not going to happen, which leads to the third part of this exercise, which is what's the more realistic thing that could happen, which is maybe they say, I don't have the same feelings, and they walk away. Or they say that they also have the same feelings and you guys start dating, which is probably the better thing that could happen. But that's how I would approach it, and just let the feelings out and tell them, because you've already told yourself what's the worst that can happen. And if you can deal with that, then you have nothing to lose. If the person that sent this in is on the older side, then I personally believe that you should just go forward with all relationships and be really open and candid about it. Most people don't like playing games. What I mean by games is you text them and they text you, and then you wait like 2 hours to respond so you don't seem like you're really clingy. That shit is stupid. Like, honestly, I fucking hate when people play games. If you're free and you see the text, just fucking respond. Don't wait forever and ever, because it's annoying. It's so annoying when you can't have a flowing conversation with somebody over text because they're just playing games with you. So a more adult approach that I would take is say, hey, I'm starting to develop feelings for you. How do you feel about us? Again, you have nothing to lose by putting yourself out there, and everything to gain from potentially being in a relationship. Now let's switch gears to the other question that's kind of similar but a little different. To refresh your memory, it's how to tell someone you love them without making them mad, which is a really interesting way to phrase this. It's almost to assume that you telling them you love them will make them mad, as if they're not reciprocating those feelings back to you, which is kind of weird in itself. I'm going to rephrase this question and give a little anecdote. So let's just pretend that the person asking this question is in a relationship with this other person and they want to say, I love you first. How do you say I love you first is kind of how I'm going to approach this question, because I don't really understand the making them mad part, if I'm being honest. I think what it comes down to is feeling out the situation, right? If you want to tell someone that you love them and you've only been dating for a couple of weeks, that might come off a little weird. Some might say it's a red flag that you're jumping into things really quickly and that it might fizzle and fade when the honeymoon phase is over. I think I personally would wait 2 or 3 months before I say I love you, even if I'm feeling those feelings. It also gives you time to really analyze how the other person is feeling. You can usually tell when the feelings are reciprocated because they're doing things for you and they care about you and they're talking to you and you just feel the love. I think I'm the kind of person that will wait until I feel those feelings before I say I love you. If you're afraid of making them mad, that kind of leads me to believe that you aren't in a relationship with them, but you have these really strong feelings about them. And maybe you don't want to lose them, right? However, I do think putting yourself out there is really important, because then at the end of the day, you said everything that you could to tell them how you feel. And you can walk away knowing that nothing was left unsaid and you don't have any regrets. If they don't say it back, that doesn't mean they don't love you. It could mean that they're just not in love with you, which is different than being in love. How I would do it is make sure the moment is right. I think you'll always remember, or at least the other person might remember, where they were when you guys said I love you for the first time. So I would make it a little special. Maybe you're going on a walk together during the most beautiful sunset. Maybe you just had a really amazing date. Or hell, maybe you even cooked them dinner and during dinner you dropped the L word. Either way, it's up to you, and I hope I kind of helped and provided some guidance. I hope you found this episode engaging and, as always, gave you something to noodle on in your own life. I'd like for you to take a moment and think about how you engage with other people. Are you one to use your phone as a crutch or interrupt people when they're telling a story? Think of ways you can be more present with those around you. And before you go, we want to start a new segment of viewer submissions. I haven't thought of a name quite yet, but the theme for this one will be stories of back to school. It can be anything from something that made you happy, nervous, or maybe even the worst back to school story you have. Email us your stories at somethingtonoodleon@gmail.com, and when we have enough, we'll read them in an upcoming episode. Until next time, bye!